And here we are. It's
Yeah,
Friday. Janice, look at us.
I know.
We made it.
I know.
We
And
made it.
I'm like in my new digs, and I
You
got a
are.
vase with some dried lilac in the back.
There it is. That's right. That's
Yep.
awesome. Well, we today is live Friday, October 29th, end of October here, 2021. And it's time for Free Tip Friday. It's the Bead Doctor edition, a little bit early.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this the at the end of the month instead of the beginning, but it's fun to actually be on here together. I know you've had a busy couple of weeks with your move, and I've had a busy couple of weeks with my move, but
Yep. We had the whole year to like, you could take one half and I could take the other. But no, we had to take 2 weekends, 2 weekends, one
that's right.
for you, or one for me, and then one for you. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
good times. Yeah.
Who knows? Andy says here, she says, congrats to both of us. Moving is way harder than making jewelry. And I will
Oh,
say that is true. Last week at
yes.
this time, uh, the pre-recorded Free Tip Friday was running, and I
Mhm.
was directing people to shove things in my moving van. So
Mhm.
at least that's done. But yes, so. But it's great to have everybody here watching. Lots of good wishes. We had a great show on Wednesday, our fifth anniversary show.
Fantastic.
It was really fun. We had a great
Yeah.
time. We'll start off with this piece, and then we've got a couple of great bead doctor questions. So I guess we should just jump in, JP. What do you think?
Sure. Will you hold it up again? I want to see it finished. It's just,
Sure. I'm gonna actually put it on the. Um, can you see it there? I'm gonna add it to the screen too.
oh, you mean you have the technology to show us the whole thing rather
I
than
do.
hold it up?
I do. Look at that. Right? Can you
It's
see it
just,
okay?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, really pretty.
I'm
It's re
really, oh, thank you.
How did you come up with that pattern? Did you, uh, is it an old pattern or something you saw
No,
somewhere?
so
You just,
no, I talked a little bit about it.
mhm.
Let me do this here and let me move this here. So you guys can find the Wednesday broadcast over on beadshop.com, and you'll be able to see. Let me move this light just a little bit here. There we go. That's better. Um, and so I just talked a little bit. I used Emily's grid, and
Mhm.
essentially all I did, Janice, was how sometimes when I don't know if you did this, but I did once in a while in high school. I hope my mom's not watching, but you took those Scantron tests, right, where you had to fill in the bubbles, right? With a number two pencil. And sometimes if I didn't know the answer, I'd just make a pattern because, why not? Really?
I thought you were
Um,
gonna ask me if we left the house and then all the girls on the corner, we put our pantyhose on before we
oh,
went to school. I thought that's what
oh,
you were gonna ask me.
no, but I would roll up my skirt a little bit too underneath. But yes, that is true. So that's all I did with this was I played Scantron and I got my um, pens,
Yeah,
and I just started coloring. And
it's
so
great.
I was really, and this week has been such a hectic week. So usually what I would do is I'd make the pattern and then I would weave a little bit of it
Mhm,
just to make sure it looked okay. But
mhm.
I just flew by the seat of my pants. What a surprise. And I am loving it. Someone said that it had a very like old world feel to
Yes,
it, which I
yes.
really love. I want to do this like on a hat band or something, unpacking all of my accessories. I realized that I have a lot of hats.
Do
So
you remember, Kate, do you remember the tile at the old shop on
yeah,
Hamilton?
this does look like the Hamilton Avenue
It's got
tile.
that old 1920s tile, or when I
It
went to
does.
Portugal, the
Yeah.
feeling of the blue and yellow tiles in Italy or Portugal.
Yeah.
It
It
really,
does.
yeah, very
It does.
Renaissance.
And I
Yeah.
think it's because I tried when I chose the beads, I tried to have some really high contrast in there.
Hmm.
Like you know me, I wouldn't always use this white, right? Like
Yeah,
white for
that's what you
me
said.
is not really a color that I would use a lot. So I'm glad we did because it's that matte white silver lined.
Hmm.
And it's really, I think it really adds a lot to it. Like you say, it has kind of that 1920s,
Hmm.
California tile,
Hmm.
that California mission style kind of tile
Hmm.
work look to it. And I like the contrast. It's a real study in contrast. So I was pretty pleased with it. So I encourage everybody to play around with this looming paper and make your own design and then make just a little short piece. This would also make a nice necklace that's has the woven beads and then maybe some loose strands here and then come back and weave. Maybe kind of it would have kind of that vintage look. Maybe I'll explore that. You know how they used to have those necklaces that have the loomed patterned, the
Yep.
loomed piece here and then just the strung and then loomed and strung, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, that
So,
might be
can
kind of
I
fun.
ask you a question
Sure.
that I bet other people are thinking about? And this goes sort of to be doctor, is
Hmm.
how did you know how many you would put? Did you leave the ends undone so that you could add extra of the
Yeah.
gold at the ends?
Yeah, so this was a really good question. So when I talked about, and on this piece here, on my pattern, I wove here this 5 and then half what I thought was going to be half the pattern. One,
Mhm.
two, um, and then 3. I guess it was a total of um, maybe it was going to be 3 motifs. I don't know how I was thinking about doing it. But then I realized as the piece was coming together and I measured it, that I did have to add at the ends over
Mhm.
here and over here. So that's exactly right, Janice. When I went here and I stopped, and then I thought, okay, then I've got my 2 motifs, 1
Right.
and 2. I was going to reverse it and then do my next motifs. I measured and it was just short.
Mhm.
So I went and I added instead of 5, you can see here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I wove
Mhm.
back over
Mhm.
here and then I added those over here. So loom weaving is really quite simple um, with this or any type of loom that you use. But if you start in the center and
Yeah.
work your way out, and that's something we're going to talk about, we have a question
Right.
um, about that. But let me cut this off because I promised people that I'd cut it off.
Yes.
Okay. And then there was a couple of questions here that I want to go back here before I cut those off. Bear with me here just a second. I'm scrolling back in, and we see our friend Carol. Carol is working in healthcare lots of days. She says she's going to watch this tomorrow because she works 16-hour days 3 times a week. So thank you,
Oh,
Carol, for being diligent on the front lines. And I hope that when you watch this on replay, you're relaxing. Um, so Uh, Jan has a question. She said she was told by Dakota Stones to use Fireline for weaving with their stones, yet I often see thread being used. Your thoughts? So I do have some thoughts about this, and we use Fireline quite a bit here.
mhm.
Emily was a big fan of Fireline. Um, I think that the threads, and we had another question here about choosing the threads, also from James. James says, what is the best to loom with as far as threads go? So what I'll do is if I am choosing the project, I'll look at the beads that I'm using and then I'll make my choice. Like sometimes this is with KO, right? And you can see I've done the warp here with the KO and the weft with the
Yeah.
KO. This one that I showed you guys last or on Wednesday, the illusion bracelet, I wanted this to have a little more of a substantial feel. And if you were here with me and we were looking at these side by side, and if I kind of push them up to the camera, you can see that. This is the one over here with the KO. This is the one with the Ceylon. The warp, the threads that go up and down, are the fine Ceylon. And the weft are the threads that go from right to left. Okay, so I used fine for the warp and micro for the weft. So it gave this piece, see how you can see the edge of that thread there? So it gave it a little more of a substantial feel. And maybe that's, I guess that's what I wanted with this piece, right? This one, since the pattern was very regimented, this one is kind of random, but this was really laid out. I didn't want the distraction of threads on the top or the bottom, so I chose the KO. You could also use Fireline. Fireline will make this piece, I think, just slightly stiffer, not so stiff that it doesn't hang nicely, but sometimes that'll come into play. Like a lot of times when Emily does her beaded beads, she'll use Fireline because she wants that structure there.
I
What are
think
your,
Kate, oh, sorry. I think
no,
she
go ahead.
also uses Fireline because she loves the check seed beads.
Hmm.
They're more inconsistent. They will sometimes um, have scratchy edges. And Dakota stones, we're talking stone beads, which also can have less consistent holes that, let's say, the Delicas and the Miyukis have. And I would, depending on what I was going to loom, I think I would never hesitate using KO with stones if it was
Mm-mm.
heavy enough, or Ceylon. It's just matching. It's like putting getting a little tiny pot and then putting a big geranium in it versus a big pot and a tiny geranium. You want them to just talk to each other. You want the thread, you want to be able to, with looming, go back and forth multiple times.
Right.
So you don't want it too heavy. But I think what's really important is, what do the outside edges of the beads look like? Are they sharp? Are they scratchy? Are they going to cut through thread? But KO is, boy, that is tough thread.
It is.
Uh, Now, what did Emily, did she do that with? That was
So
done
this
with
piece
KO, wasn't it?
here, this, yeah, and I was going to look, I pulled it so I can see it. This lantern piece, this was done with the KO and it still has some structure. So I think, it's kind of like what you start with, right? Or what you've like cut your bead teeth on, right? I mean, I made these bracelets that had the Ceylon with them. I made these pretty early on when I came back to bead shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted these pieces to lay more like woven textiles, right? So that's why with this Ceylon here, it has more of a I can feel it. It just has more of a fabricy kind of a feel. If the piece that's loomed, I'm seeing here, I've got this piece right here. Let me grab it. Oh, and I was looking for this for the last broadcast. And where was it? It was right there. This is a piece that I wove using all KO, and it's floppy isn't the right word, but it's a little the hand in this woven piece is a little looser, if that makes sense. So this is slightly stiffer and thicker, exactly the same thread beads too. But see, you can really see the threads here with the Ceylon. And I think it just depends on what you like. And again, you say kind of read the temperature of
Mhm.
your supple. That's the word. This is more slinky and supple. That's better. Um, but read the temperature of your project and then choose your threads accordingly. I like Fireline. I had never really used it. I was always like a thread, like a woven thread kind of a girl. But I like the Fireline too. But I think it just depends. For the beads, for the netted beads, I use the Fireline. I like them a lot. If I was doing something with a lot of stones, maybe if I were using like 2 millimeter stones or 3 millimeter stones to weave like this, maybe I'd use that Fireline. But I'd check the beads to make sure that they weren't what we like to call thread cutters. That the holes were nice and clean.
Right.
So I would just experiment. I think experimenting with the different threads will really. Oh, this is nice. Fluidity. Thank you, Heather. That's better. I call that softness in beadwork or knotting fluidity. I like that instead of smushiness or whatever I was saying. But let me go ahead and cut this off the loom. So I hope that that looks that helps. Okay, so let me get this stuff out of the way. Paulette's saying here she likes that Fireline doesn't split easily. That is for sure. So if you're a thread splitter like I am sometimes, that is uh, a good point. All right, I'm going to turn this to the back, and without fear, I'm going to clip this away. There and here. Getting my thread snips. There we go. Now, once your piece comes off the loom, this is something that's really important, and I think, Janice, you and I have both experienced this, is that the piece,
Oh,
if you've
yeah.
done this too tightly, if your tension, if your rows have shoved up too tightly against each other, you can have warping in your piece. So what I do is I just let it kind of settle down, right? And especially if you're gluing like leather tabs to the end, you don't want to push that leather right up against your beads, right? Because they'll warp like this. So you want to have enough air in here.
Well,
Okay.
your loom work, unless it's going to stay straight like that, if you're going to make a bookmark, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, then it's no problem. But if you're making it into a bracelet, it has to circle around your wrist, so it actually takes up more length than if it's going to sit straight
Right.
on your table. So you have to allow for those beads and that thread to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It looks
No,
so
exactly.
pretty.
It is
Oh my
pretty. If I do say
goodness.
so myself, I'm really happy with it. So here's a couple of questions from this, and I'm going to address this. Do you have any tips to avoid skipping beads? I never catch it till I'm done, then I just leave it. I leave it too, but I'll show you when I'm weaving this back through my little trick to do that. And then Vi says, how do you decide on the size of the seed bead, 6/0 versus 4/0 versus 8/0? I'm guessing it's best not to mix sizes. Well, my go-to usually is 8/0, mostly because our largest selection is an 8/0. But you can use, like, let me get this laddered piece, for instance, and let's pretend that we were doing like some weaving or something with this. Okay, this channel here. You can mix up your bead sizes, like these are 11s. These are those 2 millimeter soft-sided, the hematite cubes. And there's another row of 11s here. So if I were using the Jewel Loom, I would make the channel of my warp match the size of the bead I'm using. So you can mix your beads as long as the channel that you're using matches, right? Is the same size all the way through. So let's say that I have one of these cubes and one of these A dots, and it's in the same channel going down. They're about the same size, so I could mix them in that row, right? But I couldn't do an A dot and then one 11 dot and then an A dot without things looking kind of wavy. Okay, so it's best to stay size wise in the row. It's kind of like when you use a tila bead and a half tila or 2/4 tilas to make a tila, right? So you just have to come up and make sure that all of your beads, the width of those beads, are all the same. Let me see. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Let me grab, you can see like this. Again, this would be too wide because this is a laddered piece, not a loomed piece. But you can see if there were, if we were doing like a channel, like let's say that the woven, if you're doing a loom piece and the channel was this wide, you could use a checkmates tile, you could use two 3 millimeter fire polish, or three 8/0 beads are all the same width. So just make sure that channel, you fill that channel with an equal width. So I just want to show you the weaving in just a couple of these strands, and then we have another couple of questions. So let me see if I can find my needle here. It was here a moment ago. There it is. And I'm just going to choose one thread. I'll start with this one out here. And I'm going to, grab it, maybe. And just like, remember how we talked about this on Wednesday? Just like you're weaving a thread in and out of, adding a new thread and weaving the old thread back, that's kind of the same thing that you're doing here. You're just following a path. And this is going to kind of shore up these ends as well. Okay, so I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to go down, and I'll pop in maybe 3 beads like this, and then go down and pop 3 beads in here. Maybe I'll go 2 so it doesn't go all the way to the edge. And I'm going to make a square. I'm going to turn the corner. And if I just keep turning corners with this, that thread is going to kind of lock up a little bit. And as you do more weaving down, this is going to tighten itself up. This is just one of, I've got 10 more threads to go. So I've gone back and forth in my little square a few times. I'll pull that up and I'll clip it away. And then I'll just continue. But there's one thread down.
Kate, would you talk about why leaving as much thread as possible is important, and then using a short needle?
Yeah, that's a good question. I use the sharps because the sharps, this is the maximum amount of thread that I had left from that Jewel Loom.
Right.
So this is maybe, I don't know, 5 inches or so. But when I'm going back and forth with my needle, if I have one of the really long size 10 beading needles, I can't, if my thread starts to get short, it's hard for me to turn the corner. So you really want to make sure that you conserve as much thread as you can when you cut this away from the loom, as well as if you use one of these short size 10 sharps, it'll be a little bit easier for you to wield. Was that what you were getting at, Jacob?
Yeah, and there's sometimes when I only have a longer seed bead needle. I don't have a sharps. So what
Mm-hmm.
I will have to do, because I don't have enough thread, is I'll have to take the needle, put the needle into the beadwork where I want
Right.
the thread to go, and then thread the needle so
Right. So
that,
like let's say here, let's say I had a really short piece of thread.
right.
I would put my needle through like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would thread that eye, easier said than
Right.
done,
It's
and then I'd
true.
pull it through. Yeah,
It's not fun,
there we
but
go.
it's a
And see it, and
way
then that
of,
pulls through.
yeah, it's a way of solving for not having thread long enough.
Right. That's a great tip. And so that's it. And just, it's like weaving the ends in of a sweater, knitters, when we commiserate, we say what we love about knitting and what we dislike about knitting. Weaving in the ends is always one of those. So you just have to get kind of zen about it, really, I think. And just know that at the end of the tunnel, you're going to have a nice bracelet that's ready to go. I'm going to cut that off. I also mentioned, I said that I would address skipping a bead. When you're going across and you're looming and you're coming back and you're bringing your needle back the second round. What I do when I put my needle through the beads, I try, and as I do it, my needle is kind of, let me turn it here. My needle is kind of at an angle like this as I put it through. So I can sort of feel the tip of that needle touch the top of each of those beads as I go through. And that's just something that I kind of do automatically, right? So, so that's how I do that. And usually that helps. But if I skip and I have a thread going across out there, I make that the back of my piece. And then
Hmm.
I'll come in and I'll kind of weave around it so that if this thread ever breaks, it's shored up around it, if that makes sense. Okay.
So when you say
Um,
when you miss a bead, it means that when you first loomed it, the bead did not get captured, and so it's kind of
right.
falling.
So
Yeah.
right
Okay.
no, so it would be here. So I would go through here, here, and here.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say with my needle, see how I would miss that bead.
Yes.
And so the bead is captured, but it's only captured by one thread, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
captured by the thread below it. So I'll weave around it a little bit, and make that the back of my piece. But again, when I do that first and second pass, I try and touch each little bead as it goes along with my needle. And that I think helps. Oh, and Vi says, her personal go-to for missing a bead is another glass of wine. By the time I get to the bottom of the glass, I don't see the oops anymore. You and me both, Vi. That's perfect. Okay, so we've got another question. Oh, before we get to that though, I did want to show you with this piece, you're going to finish this off just as I finished this one off here with this Marrakesh crimp. I'm going to get my toothpick. All of these will have been woven in. I'm going to get my toothpick, add my E6000 to the front and the back of my Marrakesh crimp, and slide that in. And that's it. Let it sit overnight. The Marrakesh crimp slightly opens at the bottom. So what I do is I just give it a little tiny squeeze so that the contact on the crimp is all the way down, right? It's hugging the beads here. Also, when you put the glue, you guys, I start and I put the glue on the inside of the channel, and then I'll put it, let me get my handy toothpick. I'll put it just to the inside of the crimp here. I won't go right to the edge because then when I push this crimp on, that glue's going to spread just slightly. and we don't want the sides of that glue, especially with these metallic beads, we don't want that glue to hurt the finish of the metallic beads. But close your crimp and check it. That's the right size right there. Close that Marrakesh just slightly. Check it to make sure the beads contact with it. Then add your glue. Put that crimp on and then call it a day. Let it rest overnight and it'll be fine. Then finish it off the next day. Okay.
Kate, I have also used the nylon jawed pliers.
Sure, you could use that.
Or if I don't have nylon jawed pliers,
Yeah,
I
see,
might
those
use a
work just
piece of,
fine.
yeah, piece of ultra suede on both sides and
Sure.
then use a regular
Yeah,
plier.
I'm having a really light hand with
Mm-hmm.
this just because I like to feel the metal on metal because then I
Mm-hmm.
can really feel how far I'm pushing it.
Right.
But again, you can see there's no marking there
Mm-hmm.
on that crimp, but you could put some tape on the inside um,
Mm-hmm.
of your pieces as well. So whatever works for you, but it's a slight little movement. It's not, you're not smashing that crimp, right? So close it a little, check the fit. Close it a little, check the fit. Okay, let me let me put us all back on here. We have another question. I'm going to remove my camera and there we go. Let's see. So a question, it kind of works with this one as well. We were talking about this before we went on air. When designing a bracelet or a necklace with a pattern, and I think this is a question from Rachel, one of our customers, I feel like I have to design the piece to always end with the complete pattern. It's hard to create a pattern that ends at the correct measurement. So you were discussing a little bit about that, JP. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I've done this a million times where the beginning and the end are not symmetrical. That's
Right.
usually what we're talking about, is that the design is symmetrical. Um, whether it's a bracelet or it's a necklace, um, there's I will, if I want it to be symmetrical on both sides, I will try to start in the middle and work out on one side and out on the other side. Another way to do it is to just literally take a piece of string, decide what length you want, find the halfway point in that string, do whatever design you want up till the middle. Then when you reach that middle, that's your halfway point. Then
Mhm.
all you have to do is copy the pattern to the other side. So it can be random. You can go la, 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 la. This is my center. And then just flip it. You mirror it and you go la, 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 la to the other end. You can
Right.
also do what you did, Kate, which is you didn't know how much more length you needed. So you added equally on both ends.
Mhm.
Um, and the last thing I want to say about a bracelet is that unless it's in a shop window where you're selling it and someone is looking at it and the eye wants it to be either completely random or symmetrical, you don't see the top from the bottom. So when
Right.
you're wearing it, no one knows, oh, wait, that bead is different than the bead on the other side. So you
Right.
don't have to worry as much as you think you do.
Right. No, I agree. And like this piece here that I put front and center kind of illustrates that a little bit, Janice. And I think this is
Hmm.
one that a wrap that you created. So you can see you went here, and then this
Yeah.
fifth, number 5 right here is that very center. And then you flipped it and you just mirrored what was over here on this end. It's a little different when it's a wrap bracelet because the wraps themselves, as they wrap around the wrist, can vary a little bit in where they land. It's just that last segment has to has to fit correctly. Um, sometimes though, what I do if I'm working, that's what I did with this. So it's really very timely. With this piece, I was also afraid that I would end in the middle of one of these patterns. So that's really the main reason for this gold here and here was so I could add or take away. If I just had 3 rows, it would be fine. If I had 4, it would be fine. But, let's say that I was stringing here and then, oh, I had to end right here, right? So that's why I did this heavy gold on both ends. So the same thing with a necklace, or a single strand bracelet. You can put all matching beads kind of on the ends, and if they're not quite the even amount, no one's ever going to know. But this is 7 rows here, 7 rows here.
There is a project that we have under learning under archived projects,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tricks to patterning.
Right.
And even in that, I made a mistake. Even on the cover, there's a mistake where I had an extra bead. But there are several, whether it's tricks to the trade, uh, there's tricks to patterning. There are some handouts under archive projects that
Mm-hmm.
talk about how to create patterns, how to mirror patterns, and a pattern can be as little as 2 beads, two
Mm-hmm.
beads, 2 beads, 2 beads,
Two
or
beads,
two,
yeah.
one, two, one, so forth. So
Oh,
it's just fun to play with patterns. I love it.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. The patterning, and that's why I think this was so effective because I didn't stress over it. It looks pretty nice, I think, if I do
It
say so.
really does.
Let me let me do this.
That the
I like it.
white in the center really makes that
It really
bracelet.
makes it. I need to take that lesson with me because I would have done something maybe in the ivory instead of the white,
Hmm.
but the white is what really works. And there was a
Yeah.
quick question here. Coral asked the pens that I used, and then Shirley answered that it was the Stadler. So they were the Stadler pens, the ones that look like a pencil, but it's actually a fine tip pen. I really like those. I already put them away in my car. I'm looking around to see if I have them, but I took them with me so I can have them next week. But it's the Statler. I love those. I'm glad you guys like those too. Um, let's see. Is there another question going on here? Let's see. Okay. And a big shout out. I wanted to give Geeta a big shout out. She's over on Facebook doing some linking as Geeta and
Hmm.
over on our YouTube channel doing some linking as Biff Maniac. So thank you, Geeta, for
Oh,
always picking
it
up
is the
our heavy
best.
lift. So thank you so much for that. We had another question about someone's silk wrap coming undone. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the anatomy of a silk wrap real quick. Um, and I wanted a better, oh, I don't know if this is going to be better. I also packed one of the lights here, so
Mm.
I shouldn't have done that because it gave me a dark spot right here, but that's okay.
I always tell people, Kate, when
Hmm.
you're doing a silk wrap, and I know you're going to talk about this, but think about a
Hmm.
gopher. You look out at your front lawn and you see that gopher going underneath the lawn. Has anyone ever seen that? Where
Right.
the gopher actually lifts the lawn up a little bit and moves along underneath it. And, some people really hate that. But that's what they do, and,
Yeah.
in a silk wrap, that's the one time you want that gopher going underneath the lawn. You wanna
No,
see it literally go
that's
across
exactly
and
right.
into the middle.
And one of the other things I think when people have an issue with silk wraps is that the first wrap and the last wrap need to be snug. around whatever it is you're silk wrapping as well.
Mm,
If you kind of are loosey-goosey here and here, things can loosen up, and that gopher that's running under the wrap will loosen up.
mm-hmm.
Okay. So, oh, I'm glad my mom noticed my earrings. I am. I'm wearing, I'll show you. These are Michelle has a pair of these. She ordered a pair of these for me. These are
Those are fantastic.
my skull Dia de los Muertos coral rose kind of extravaganza here. So yes, thanks, Ma. I'm glad you noticed. They were my little.
And if someone wants to get those, Kate, where do they go to get
Oh,
them?
you can grab them on they're a special order, and you can go right to katerichbergjewelry.com. Is where you
Okay.
can get those. I think I'm taking orders on them right now. It'll be a few weeks before you get them, but they're worth waiting for. So
I think
here,
so.
if I do say so myself, thank you very
Mm-hmm.
much. Oh, and thank you for the earring, love. Oh, and Michelle said yes, they're my favorite earrings. Thank you, Michelle. I'm so glad you like them. So here's my 1.5 millimeter leather. Okay, let's get to the silk wrap. My 1.5 millimeter leather right here. And I have just some fine Ceylon here, but you could do this silk wrap with anything. CKC, Chinese knotting cord, um, larger regular Ceylon. You could even use micro Ceylon. Doesn't matter. I've done it with uh, leather, uh,
Rat
Irish wax
tail,
linen, rat tail,
everything.
any of it, right? Anything. So what I do is I lay it down, and we're going to have this loop, and I'm going to go loop to loop here. And I'm going to have this little tail. I'm going to pull this down here like so.
So the short tail's on the bottom, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter, Janice. The
Okay.
short tail could be on the top or the bottom. At least I don't think it matters for me
Okay.
personally. What does matter, however, though, is this first wrap. So see, I've got my wrapping thread. I come around and I do this with my dominant hand, and I wrap around once and I get it nice and tight. Okay? Then I'll get that second wrap going. And just like I talk about wire wraps, okay, those two little wraps need to sit nice and tight next to each other. Okay? Now I change hands. I hold this with my right and I kind of get my thumbnail in there. Hold those two wraps. This loop will kind of be loose now, these two, but it doesn't matter because see, I've got it pinched right there. Now I get this thread, and see, I also hold my silk wrap. This main portion here, I hold on the horizon line, and this thread, I go from on the vertical. So I'm wrapping at a 90-degree angle. So see that? I'm not wrapping like this to get little little space in there. I'm getting one wrap below the other. And my cords underneath here are also flat. Okay?
And I think it's important to remind people because you can forget and get confused that when you're silk wrapping, you are going in the direction of the loop of your thread. So
That's
you
right. So
have
I'm
to go
wrapping
towards the
towards
loop.
this loop, correct, because the loose strand is what I'm going to pull in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
So now here comes my final wrap. Okay, here it comes. I'm going to wrap, and again, I kind of get my thumb right there, so I'm holding everything tight so it stays. I put my end through, and sometimes with my fingers, I kind of hold it there so it's tight, right? So I don't have like a lot of loose here. Okay. Now I'll turn this, my hand's starting to cramp. I'll grab this loose end, and that loose end is what pulls. Now, I don't pull it all the way right away. See, I pull it tight, and before I pull it underneath, I snug it, And then I take this thread that was my last wrap and I kind of tighten it. So you can see here, now I can hold it and see how everything's nice and tight here. But this loop that I've been pulling with this strand, it's not been gopherized yet, right? The little
Mm-hmm.
loop hasn't come underneath. So now we're going to do that. So I like pulling this with my dominant hand. Okay. So I'm going to come in again, pull that. If you see any looseness to your silk wrap on this last little wrap, pull it tight as that loop gets closer to coming underneath. Then I kind of put my thumb on top of the wrap, and then I can feel, I put lotion on my hands, of course, before this, but I can feel, and you can kind of see it, that the loop, it's right there. I'm going to pull it just a little bit more. There it goes. And what I'll do, sometimes it scrunches everything up on each other, so I'll just kind of give it a little wiggle so everything is even again. And then I'll grab both strands from the right to the left. The 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 right, this side, sorry, to the left. Let me get my right and left right. And pull on both of them. Okay, and then kind of pull it into place here. And that's it. And I can see here, and you guys can see how this first wrap on either of these sides is nice and tight. So it's going to hold everything together. Plus, all of these wraps, there's no little loose place here where I can see in between to see my leather or anything between those. They're all nice and uniform and tight. Then once I know that that loop that's catching the thread is in the center of my wrap, I'll just come in and I'll clip. Now, sometimes before I pull that loop in, if I'm doing this with leather, say, or something that might be a little slick, I'll put a drop of GS Hypo cement right on that loop before it gets pulled through. Okay? Then that glue will kind of walk its way down to the center as well and kind of help that thread stay in place. But normally, like this, I don't glue.
And
Go ahead,
I would
Janice. Sorry.
recommend if it's your first time making a silk wrap, practice on one and then actually practice pulling it back out again, pulling it back in again. You'll get the feeling of the accordion of it going open and close, and then you'll really understand, oh, that's what it's doing. By putting that thread through the string, the ceylon or whatever it is loop, you're literally pulling the loop into the middle. And so
right, just there. And if you pull too hard, the loop will come out this side.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you just pull it back through again.
And then you just pull it back through. Exactly. Yeah. Pull it back from the opposite end again. So you can move that loop close to this end, close to this end. Where you want it to end up, though, is, you know, in the middle of your wrap there. That's the goal anyway.
Yeah. So the silk wrap has to be long enough so that that knot that you're making, the loop, will sit somewhere in the middle. If you're making a silk wrap with only like 3 times around, there's not enough on the edges to keep it secure in the middle. So
right. You haven't made enough tunnel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Well, great. Well, Janice, I think,
Katie,
that we, let me remove this one here. I think that we have answered a whole bunch of questions. I hope everybody enjoyed all of those tips. I learned a lot. I like these bead doctor segments. I think they're fun.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, always you can email us right to info@beadshop.com. Drea has a document for us, and we add them right into the document, and we will answer them on a live broadcast. So thank you so much for sending those in. I also wanted to mention, JP, we have till the end of the month, which is just a couple more days, we do have our October. Whoops, let me take that banner off here so everybody can see that. Our 10% off all orders, no minimum. Just put your coupon code autumn10 in at checkout. And you guys, if you have not signed up for our newsletter, please do so. We've got some fun things stacked up for the remainder of this year. So you can find all of the information on the project and the products from today's broadcast right on our website. You can also sign up for our newsletter for the latest discounts, giveaways, and new products. And of course, our social, you can follow us on our Instagram at beadshop.com. Join us over at the Bead Table, over 7,000 beaders strong over there. Really some beautiful projects and things happen over on our beadshop.com private group, the Bead Table, but we'd love to have you join us. And if you are watching on YouTube or if you're watching on replay, thank you so much for joining us. Hit that like and subscribe button, you guys, will you? I've got a lot of people watching and I only have a few likes on this video. So if you love us and you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button right now, would you? We really, really appreciate that. Great. People are listening to me. Great. I see those likes going up and up. So please keep hitting that like button. We really, really appreciate that. Next week, Janice, I'm going to be broadcasting from my home studio, which will be very fun that Wednesday.
I'm excited.
It'll be fun. I'm excited too. This weekend, I'm going to pull it all together. I'm going to start with November. We're going to talk a little bit about creativity this November. We had a couple of posts over in the Bead Table, and they resonated with me. People talking about creativity, trying to get back into creativity, trying to find their creativity, how to hang on to creativity when it wants to run away. So Wednesday, I'm going to do a whole bunch of ideas for fast earrings. I feel like when I have no idea what I want to make, 3 beads on a pin or that variation of them, earrings, I think, get your hands limber, get your design mind limber. We're going to talk about using a limited palette because I only brought a few beads with me to play around with. We're also going to look at some of the different ear wires and ear treatments and things like that. So earrings will be great for gifts for holidays, and they're a great way to kind of kickstart your creativity. Then on Friday, for Free Tip Friday, I'm going to be at my quilt retreat, my annual quilt retreat with my mom. We didn't get to go last year because of COVID, but this is where we have our annual bead retreat also, which
yes,
we're tossing around that idea. So that idea isn't completely gone by the wayside, I don't think, but I will be there quilting this time. So I have a special handout for you guys that I'm going to share that day. It is, and some of you may already have it because sometimes I link it up on my website, but it is a little kind of an ebook that I have that's free, that talks about color and kickstarting your creativity and doing color palettes and stuff. And it's one of the things that we have used before as a handout at our bead retreat. So I thought, in honor of me being back at our bead retreat place, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about kickstarting your creativity through the use of color. So that's what
Mom will join you.
If I can tear her away from sewing, because she is working on stuff for their boutique bazaar that's coming up, their annual church boutique. So she's making table runners like they're going out of style. So we'll see. We'll see if I can tear her away from the sewing machine. But I'll have some fun things to share with you.
Does half of Fresno have a table runner by now?
I don't know. I hope so.
You'll have to tell us, Gwen, you'll have to tell us what the count is of how many table runners you have so far.
Yeah. And I'll share, okay. Michelle is saying we need to see those quilts. Yeah. I'll show you some. I will bet that I'll have some things in there we'll have some fun stuff. And so Lorena, I wanted to, hey Lorena, I um I went in and I approved everyone in the Facebook group. Message me on Facebook as well to make sure, because I can also add you that way. I added everybody, so if check and see if you are in the group. If you're not, just message me over Facebook. I'll get you in there. I'm sorry if I didn't hit the button correctly or whatever, but I'll get you in. I promise. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I feel bad. And the boutique, Kendra wants to know, is the boutique online? It's not, but
Oh,
it's a
hi,
good.
Kendra.
But Kendra's on. She's on. So we'll have some fun next Friday from San Juan Batista. Okay. So thanks again, everybody. I think that does our hour. So thank you so very much, everyone, for joining us today. It's fun to be going into fall, and it's fun to be planning some fun fall into winter designs for all of you guys. And Amy says it's lovely to have Train Guy 156 in person, Janice. So
Oh boy.
yeah,
Oh,
that's that's
I'll
awesome.
never live that down, I don't think. Train guy
Yeah.
156.
156. So, yeah, so Vi, go right over to our Facebook group. If you search the bead table, that's the name of our bead shop Facebook group. Just go ahead, click and join. You need to answer the 3 questions. So make sure that you answer those questions, because if you don't answer the questions, it gets rejected. So at least answer just one. Okay. So go right over there and join us. We'll love to have you. So, and yes, Kim, I'll show you the quilts that were made for the retreat rooms. Some of the rooms do have the quilts in them. So I'll see if I can, hopefully our room will have one of the quilts, so I can share that with you. So that'll do it, JP. We'll be
Yes.
back together on air in November. So mark your
Soon.
calendars for every Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be coming at you. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, and I will see you on Wednesday, everyone, from my home
Yes.
studio. Hopefully, it's clean.
Yes.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.